Warm greetings from the high 10. It is the Vault XL. Thank you so much for your time. Sorry I haven't been on, but we're going to get to this new topic pertaining to Bryan Kohberger. After many months of speculations and rumors, there are many of you who have your opinions pertaining to who you think his intended victim was. Was it Kaylee, Maddie, or Xana? Or was it all of them? Just those three? Or did he intend to kill all 5 of the young ladies? Was it happenstance if one of the intended victims was on the top floor, Kaylee or Maddie, that Xana and Ethan were collateral damage? They just happened to be in the way, crossed his path in the house. We will chop up this said topic because it is a subject matter of News Nation. And I'm going to play you that commentary. Thank you all so much for joining me. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $BigAngie129 Cash App. All stickers and chats are welcome during this live stream. Let's hear what News Nation has to say pertaining to this speculation. And now, if these opinions are of someone else's, you're entitled to your opinion of who you think the intended victim was. But know that law enforcement has gathered, I'm sure, a lot of information from Mr. Kohberger's devices and his home and possibly the home of his parents. So there's a lot of information, I'm sure, stored pertaining to who his intended victim was, if indeed it is one or more than one of the females. It is said that he had pictures of one and messaged one through IG app. So who was that victim? Were the other people in the house collateral damage, in the way? Because we learned that Maddie was in the bed with Kaylee. So if indeed one of them was his intended target, he had to get rid of the other one because they were in the same bed sleeping. Now, 2 people on the second floor, Xana and Ethan, third person, a DM who is alive. Did he go down those stairs, cross the path with one of those kids, Ethan or Xana, and he had to eliminate them because they saw him either coming in, going out, or him coming down the stairs? Or he was wanting to hurt all of those girls. But then when we say all, are we clarifying just the 3 that were murdered? Because we now know that 2 were not harmed. Thank you for joining me. Hello, everybody in the chat. Thank you so much for your time. News Nation is the source, everybody.
Well, accused University of Idaho murderer Bryan Kohberger's quadruple homicide case captivated the nation, certainly, after University of Idaho students Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were found dead in their apartment last November. Now, internet sleuths tried to put the pieces together as PhD criminology student Kohberger managed to evade police for 7 weeks before he was eventually apprehended, eventually caught. Well, now some believe that he never intended to kill all 4 of those students, that there may have only been one victim he was originally targeting. One of these people, journalist Caitlin Becker, who joins us live tonight. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, thank you.
So Caitlin, out of all 4 victims, who do you believe Kohberger actually intended to harm that night?
My gut tells me that it is Kaylee, but my investigation as a journalist and as a reporter who has been digging into this for months now tells me it is either Kaylee or Maddie. The evidence doesn't really narrow it down to one of them, but my gut says Kaylee, but I do believe that all of the evidence points to one of the victims in the upstairs bedroom was the initial target and that there was only one victim targeted. Unfortunately, that means the 3 other victims were just collateral damage.
And what explains that to you? What evidence particularly is leading you down that road? I know that we were speaking with former CIA officer and FBI Special Agent Tracy Walder about this months ago, and she also believed that the concept of overkill, that there was one person in particular who really received the brunt of the violence and was stabbed over and over and over again, also led her to potentially that conclusion. What are you tracking at this time?
And to kind of piggyback off of that one victim, we know from Kaylee's family was Kaylee. Kaylee's father, Steve Gonzalez, has said that Kaylee's wounds were significantly more brutal than any of the other victims, even Maddie Mogen, who died in the same bed next to her. We also know that the knife sheath was dropped next to Maddie's body, which leads me to believe that the killings started upstairs in that third floor bedroom. We also know that Xana Kernodle was awake at the time of the killing. She was on TikTok just moments before being stabbed. And we also have to add that with the eyewitness testimony that we get from the surviving roommate. The surviving roommate, who was sleeping on the second floor, recalls hearing the killer come into the house and be on the third floor first, essentially putting Kaylee's dog in one of the bedrooms, then going to that upstairs bedroom, and then filtering out through Xana and Ethan. And if Xana was awake and came across the killer, it stands to reason that the killer likely had to kill Xana because they felt that they had to clean up a loose end, and Ethan was in the same bedroom.
And, it seems as this case comes together that prosecutors will try to make the case that this was a well thought out plan for Kohberger, that there's evidence he visited that campus, that he stalked the victims, he followed their moves on social media. What do you think actually happened in that house for him to end up killing 4 victims instead of 1?
For everything that I know, as you mentioned, all of those things that the police believe have been pretty much laid out. They have his cell phone and his car circling by that house 12 times, beginning as early as late June. So there's all of this evidence that he had been there multiple times. There are also sources saying that he had followed all 3 of the victims on social media, but only repeatedly messaged one of them. Another source said that he was found with images of just one of the victims, which again goes back to my theory that there was likely an alleged obsession with Bryan Kohberger and one of the girls in the house. It's my belief that it was Kaylee, and that the issue was he had planned to allegedly go in this house and kill Kaylee, but probably expected Kaylee to be in her bedroom. But at the time, she had already moved out and was sleeping in the same bed as Maddie. So this is allegedly all planned out. The suspect enters the home thinking that they're going to go into one room, ended up having to go into a second room, finding 2 girls instead of 1. And that is, I think, where the dominoes started to fall and how we ended up with such mass casualties.
All right, Caitlin Becker, I certainly appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
We want to let our viewers to know to stay tuned tonight, because News Nation's Ashley Banfield is sharing new details about Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin's murders and the case.
All right, I'm going to cut it there. This content was uploaded 18 hours ago. Tune in to Banfield for the latest update pertaining to the Idaho 4 slangs. This is this woman's opinion, and she's basically telling you that what she thinks versus the evidence thus far is contradictory of what she thinks. She thinks it's Kaylee as the intended victim, but evidence has, I believe, led her to that it could be possibly one of the other young women. I'm just going to say, as for common sense, law enforcement knows possibly who the intended victim or victims were. But each theory you throw out can be combated due to the fact 2 are living, which is DM and Bethany. So if you say, I think he went in to kill either girl on the top floor, Kay or Maddie, he killed Xana and Ethan as collateral damage, that makes no sense, because allegedly DM saw him walk by her room as she stood in the doorway, and he left her alive. So then you have to ask the next question. When you say you were in the doorway, are you actually in the doorway with the door wide open where he could see you, or you were standing with the door cracked and got a view of him walking by? Because to say that Ethan and Xana were collateral damage, that would be contradictory of leaving DM alive and also another girl alive on the bottom floor. And if indeed he watched the house, he's been there more than a dozen times. He's stalked the girls on social media. That means he's seen the pictures of all the girls. He's seen the girls coming and going out of the house. He's possibly followed them to their jobs, to the campus, learned their schedules at the campus. Then that means he knew that there were 5 girls living there. And that's where that's a problem. But like I said, I don't have the evidence. Law enforcement has it. They know who he was messaging, not messaging, who he focused on, who he probably had as a screensaver, journals, things he's probably said about the girls or whomever in his devices. Naturally, all that information will come out during the trial. Who the intended victim was, or if indeed there were more. The sheath found by Maddie, Kaylee having more significant wounds than the others. Was it Kaylee? I never heard the father just come out and just say she was bludgeoned worse than the other kids and I saw what the other kids looked like. I'm just saying. He just said they didn't match. And I was confused because, once again, he gave a lot of contradictory statements the first month or so of these kids being unalived. So I was confused by what point he was trying to make. Because you can't say she had more wounds, more significant than the others, but then in the same breath he said the killer didn't have to go upstairs. That led us to think that there was another person that should have been the victim, which we already know none of them should have been the victims, but the killer chose to go to this house for whatever reason to choose whomever to kill, which he did. But the father's statements are contradictory. He didn't have to go upstairs. Well, then if he didn't have to go upstairs, then why did your daughter allegedly have more significant wounds than the other kids? See, it makes no sense. So this woman's giving her opinion that she thinks Kaylee was the intended victim, but evidentiary shows it possibly was another girl. Ethan and Xana were collateral damage. Perhaps either these two heard him coming down the stairs, running down the stairs, got up to see what was going on, or was in the kitchen getting something to drink, or however it goes, crossed their path. I got to get rid of them. But then that makes no sense because he left 2 alive. So how could it be that they're collateral damage or Kaylee and Maddie are collateral damage? Take your pick. How could it be that either of these kids were collateral damage? When you've left one on the same floor as Ethan and Xana, she sees you walking by to describe you to authorities. Number 2, there's another victim on the bottom floor, allegedly, Bethany, asleep in her room. So what's the truth? Please go to my community board to take the poll on who you think the victim, the intended victim was. Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, or all of the kids that were in the house. But as I said, you can't say all because 2 are alive. Very interesting conversation. Still speculation, innuendos. Where I have a problem with this story is the obvious. When you hear this commentator speaking of sources, who are these sources that keep talking about pictures and whose pictures he had on the phone and who he messaged? And every other day for the past month or 2, we've heard this since probably January of who he allegedly messaged, who he had more pictures of, who possibly was the intended victim. So who is the source that's speaking? Or are there more than one source speaking to News Nation? Because we had information pertaining to the house, what happened that morning when the bodies were discovered. Phone call coming from the inside of the house, going out to 911, friends being called over, other people verifying that there are dead people in the house, so on and so forth. What is the truth to all of this story? Some of you believing that DM may have had involvement with Mr. Kohberger, knew him, plot, conspiracy, however you want to word it. Once again, speculations, gossip. But what is the truth? maybe didn't have knowledge of Kohberger, no conspiracy with him, but failed to call for help when sensing something was wrong on DM's part. I would agree with that. She should have called 911, because it can't be you're in a phase or a fog that long, but then you could think to call 911 many hours later. That makes no sense. Hit the link to give your opinion. It is in the chat if you want to give your opinion pertaining to the intended victim. I'd like to hear your opinion on this subject matter, because like I said, in the end, we'll have to wait for the evidence at trial for the state to bring us what they found in his devices, computers, if he took photographs, if he wrote in a journal, if he wrote anything in his phone, took notes in his phone, to who he liked, was obsessed over, whichsoever, or if it was the three girls that he murdered. But when you think of each theory contradicts the other one. Because if one was a victim, intended victim, it didn't make sense to kill the other ones and then leave two alive. Why would you kill three, but then walk by one? She's in a fog. He's in a fog. This vision snow that they keep talking about, he has or had, or he thought he had. So everybody was visually snowed on this fateful morning. She's in a fog. He's in a fog. Then that made no sense to kill Ethan and Xana if Kaylee or Maddie were his targets. Strange. Very strange information. And will he even tell the truth? I suspect he's still presuming he's innocent. He wants to be presumed innocent. He's claiming he's innocent. Will he ever tell the truth? We've learned with cases like this of serial killers and people who have killed many people, several people. It's usually a while before they decide to tell the truth about their emotions and where they came from, their background, how they came to be this monster, this walking, living creature that's a menace. And I suspect that's what will happen with Kohberger. He will wait till he's exhausted all measures through appeals, and then he will finally sit down with a psychiatrist, therapist, or whomever, and then tell the truth. A reporter, a news agent, he will finally tell them why he did what he did when he realizes he will not be coming out of a prison. As most of you know, the state of Idaho has decided to induct the firing squad as a death penalty if available drugs are not accessible. So Mr. Kohberger could be facing the firing squad if indeed there are no drugs that can be injected into his arm. How do you feel about that? Please take my polls on my community page for the said topics. Thank you so much for joining me. Yes, indeed. So many stories and rumors. If only one was targeted, why not get them alone instead of going into a house with all the cars parked outside? Yes, that's a question many of us have asked. Why would you go in a place where, one, we live in a digital age? Many people have doorbell cameras, cameras on their houses. There's cameras on lampposts, street lights. You're going to be risk seeing some type of way. But that goes to show you when you're cocky, when people are cocky and they're arrogant, they don't think properly. They think they're thinking it through, but they're not. The fact that he went to this house over 12 times should tell you he wasn't in the right frame of mind. Because you could be seen even if nobody in that general area had a doorbell camera. Somebody could be just looking out their window. They could have a desk at their window, and their window faces those kids' house, and they could have noticed this white car going by a lot, circling around, thinking, wow, what's wrong with that car? You know, scurrying around like a rat. See, you don't know who's watching. And just because a person doesn't tell you, oh, yeah, I've been seeing this white car outside your house, doesn't mean the white car wasn't there. Doesn't mean he didn't get out of the car. See, he's stupid. And we'd have to use deduction. He had to have gotten out the car at some point. Well, what's the purpose? Just sitting. in an eye view of this house. It's what I tell you about seeing the dress in the window at the store. How many times are you going to walk by the window? How many times are you going to stand at the window and look at the dress? You're going to want to get out. That car, just like you'd want to go inside the store and look at the dress. Touch the dress. Try the dress on. Same thing. You're not going to just keep driving by the house. Because you really can't learn the specimens by driving by. Because that dead ends up on that hill. So you're going to have to get out of that car and walk by, look around, play dumb, go up that hill where those apartments sit, try to get a bullseye view and peep down through there, walk around some type of way to look, to peer. And another thing that's bothered me, if I was to believe that Kaylee was the intended victim, it was always rumored from the beginning that she had moved out. And I said I had wanted a source to say she had moved out. And some of you said there was some article that was printed, a Washington State article or whatever, that the father did say that she moved out, or her parents or somebody said she had moved out of the apartment. Okay, so this is where I have a problem with her being the intended victim and that allegation. If she moved out of the apartment or this house or whatever, he's been watching the house, then he would know, that Kaylee did not live there. So why would I be going to this house, if Kaylee is my intended target and I'm going by there, let's say recently up until the killings, then I would know she's not there. I don't see her car. Every time I go by, I don't see her car. I don't see her truck. Then why would I on this morning make my way into this house? And obviously the door was unlocked, or glass door unlocked, because there was no breaching of a door, no break-in, no doors jimmied. And that goes to show us that these kids were frivolous about their safety. They didn't lock their doors. They felt like they were safe in their environment, but they were not. And no one is safe, even with a locked door, even with ADT, even with a doorbell camera, even with security cameras. Because if a person wants you, he or she will get you, such as what someone has asked in the chat. Why didn't he try to get the girls alone? And it shows he didn't care. He was brazen. He felt like he could overtake whoever was in the house, because he did go in the house and he did kill more than one person. And he probably assumed, well, they're just women. They can't overpower me. And they didn't win. And sadly, a man was there who was big enough to go toe-to-toe with Bryan Kohberger, but Ethan did not win either. And that part bothers me as well. A big guy such as Ethan did not win the battle. But we do not know the situation and how he was killed. If he was in the bed, he jumped up, he was pushed down, caught off guard. The girl screamed, he jumped up. See, we don't know. It is alleged that he was found in a doorway. I'd rather wait till court trial to get all the logistics of where everybody was in the room, where they lied, who appeared to be asleep or lying down. But it's a lot to digest. And with these alleged sources coming out saying this, and this about this person, and messages and IG, you don't know what to believe. Because if you say one was intended, then why did he kill all these kids? Why stalk this house, period? One victim, 3 victims, whatsoever, 5 victims, but only 3 killed. Yes, exactly. June can't come soon enough. This is the truth. Jackie says, could he have had romantic feelings for one of the victims and was rejected by her or the other victims? Well, Jackie, I believe that's why he stalked the girls, is because he did like one of them and she did not respond to his messages on IG. And he decided to, on this fateful morning, break into this home and kill these kids. It's a very diabolical story because, as I've told many of you on this network, you do not know people. You walk by people every day. You see people every day. You get conversations from people. People message you on apps and Messenger and inbox you. But you have to be very careful talking to people in general. You have to be very careful just walking about because you don't know who's lying in wait, watching your every move. Whether you live in an apartment, condo, it could be the maintenance man, it could be the apartment manager, it could be the guy across the hall, the neighbor across the street. You don't know people. You know, a lot of people are murdered by people they do not know. The high statistics is that people are murdered by people they know and know of. But you do have that rare occasion of crimes that are of opportunity, such as like carjacking, robberies, rapists. Most of them don't know their victims, but they have lied in wait, watched, fantasized about a certain female, male, and then they pounce. And this is why I said you have to be aware of your surroundings. You have to be careful who you speak to, how you talk to people, what you tell people. You know, everything's opportunity, whether it's stalking or not. Everything from a carjacking to a robbery, break-in, rape, it's all the same. It's an opportunity that the person took. He or she decided to act out on that fateful day, chose the victims for whatever reason, know them, don't know them. You have to be careful of your surroundings, keeping your doors locked, windows locked, because any small window of opportunity, just going out, opening your patio doors for fresh air, you're going out to walk the dog and you go to your yard, you don't think to lock your door. You're at your own house. You're going to walk your dog outside, or you're going to go out, sit some tea out on a table. You're not locking the door. For what? It's your house. But you don't know who's watching, who's lurking around. And you may be in a safe neighborhood. You may be in a very well-to-do neighborhood where you don't think people will be roaming around and wandering around. You cannot say, because everything's about opportunity. And as we have seen with a what was it, a UPS FedEx driver that kidnapped that little girl and murdered her a few months ago, that goes to show you can't trust people. You can't trust people. So who was the intended victim? Let's go to my community page and see how many of you took the poll pertaining to the intended victim. Thank you for joining me. My next live is going to be pertaining to the bodies of men surfacing in the waters in Chicago. I think it's time I discuss that matter since that is my home. It's a very diabolical case. What is going on? I doubt that these are men killing themselves and jumping in Lake Michigan. We're going to talk about that a little bit later this evening because I have been very absent from my network and because I have new employment that keeps me busy and I'm very tired once I get in and I just can't think of doing any lives because I just can barely keep my eyes open. But I wanted to rest today because right now I'm in transition with moving and everything. So I decided this one day to dedicate to my network to get content out there for those who have been very loyal to me and keeping abreast of my topics and updates. I thank you for patronizing. I really appreciate it. Let's see what's happening on my community page. Okay, everybody. After 4 months of speculations and rumors, who do you think was Bryan Kohberger's intended victim? I have 23 votes. 13% says Kaylee. 78% says Maddie. Xana, 0%. Wow. All 9%. Very interesting. Now, as of late, the past couple months, A lot of you thought it was Xana because of the Greek restaurant and him being a vegan and them saying that was one of the restaurants that sold vegan food, which I don't know, it's kind of far-fetched to me because I felt like there are a lot of places you can get a vegetable plate. What was so great about this Mad Greek place? Because in my mind, I'm thinking there are lots of places where you can buy vegetables, in a restaurant. I mean, the average restaurant sells vegetables. So I wasn't like just jumping on the bandwagon that, oh, because she worked at Mad Greek, that it was her. And then with all the things the father had said in the beginning, Mr. Gonsalves, about Kaylee, I thought maybe it was Kaylee. She's a very pretty girl. And it's not to say that the other girls were not pretty, but I don't know. I kind of lean towards that, but I don't know what to think at this point. That's why I never speculated on who the killer was, any of the suspects, because I wasn't going to do that. And I kept my word. I never speculated on who the killer was because I told myself it could be anybody. When you're dealing with young people and you're dealing with thousands of people they're coming in contact with, as far as being university students and working and neighbors, it could have been anybody. And indeed, it was. It was some random bloke who was not from the state of Idaho or the state of Washington. He lived in Washington only a few months, grad student, became fixated on one of these kids or all, and on that fateful morning decided to kill them, whether by accident, on purpose, cross paths, however you want to word it. He did those things. And I believe his personal effects will possibly give us a rendering of who his intended victim was. And perhaps he did kill the other people in the house because they were in the way. But then that makes no sense because DM allegedly saw him walk by her door. So why would he leave her alive? But then the other ones would be collateral damage if he only intended to kill one of them. See, that makes no sense. Makes no sense. So as of today, Maddie is your pick. Because at one time, most of you thought it was Xana. But 76% of you say Xana. 76% of you say Maddie. 16% of you have said Kaylee. 8% said all. And 0 says Xana. Very interesting. That's 25 votes. Now, if you're watching this live stream and you want to take the poll, please go over to my community board and take the poll. Who you think the intended victim or victims were. That's the said information, you guys. I try not to talk very much about Kohberger because it's so depressing. It's just absolutely depressing. And talking about him and what he's doing in jail and all of that is of no consequence to me. I just see an update here by News Nation that there's a school shooting in Nashville. 3 children, I believe it's also going to say gunmen dead. Oh, Lord. And let's pray for Mississippi and Alabama, I believe, in Georgia. They've had horrific storms down there in the deep south. Mississippi has been torn to pieces. I believe that's Rolling Rock and Silver City, Mississippi. So for all of our friends, associates, family that live in Mississippi, prayers to those people that live down there because the land is devastated at this point. It's just shredded right now. We're also going to pray for our great nation because we have some issues right now with Iran. And we're going to pray for the ugliness that is transpiring abroad. Just trying to see if anything else pertaining to these kids here. If not, I'm not going to hold you guys. Okay, she's done a special. uh, against Banfield. It's 42 minutes. And I don't really care about his life behind bars. Let's talk about the house. The house is being demolished. The person that owned the house has gifted the house to the University of Idaho. And also the university has written a letter to the parents. That's information that's come forward as well. I'm going to play you a little bit of that. The link is in the chat if you want to hit the link to give me your opinion. If you've never spoken on this network, the Vault XL, please hit the link. Give us your opinion on sad matters of the house being demolished. Also, who you think the intended victim was. And please take the poll on my community page. Thank you so much. You are now listening to the Vault XL. Thank you so much.
Probably remember on December 7th, the last time that personal items were taken out of the house, we were present. And it was such an incredibly solemn moment. This was a law enforcement action. They took the personal items out of the house and they walked those items one by one out to a truck so that they could transport it to a waiting warehouse where the families could come and retrieve them. I think we have some video from back on December 7th. And I'll tell you what, when they brought out the boxes and the suitcases and the golf clubs and the bags of clothing and loaded it into the U-Haul, it was such a sad moment. I'm going to play this for you, but I want you to just know what's happening outside the purview of the camera. The media stayed a long way back on the other side of the road to shoot this, but nobody spoke. The media didn't speak. No one asked questions. The officers who were bringing those items out to load up the U-Haul truck, it was dead silent. It was so solemn. So I'm going to run that moment for you, but just know that we are running it with the existing natural sound. It's just that it was so quiet in observation. That was a day that was observed by our senior national correspondent, Bryan, who was among the media representatives, seeing across the street and watching, observing, but out of respect, staying quiet. Bryan, that was such a difficult time. I had thought that all the items were brought out of the house, and here we learn that there are still more. Do you have any idea how they'll set up this next transfer of property?
Yeah, it was very, very sad, actually, just because we had been so into the investigation of the case at that point, and it was just a very human moment then seeing the victim's items brought out. But you'll notice the U-Haul truck, which the police chief was driving, by the way, and it was police officers who were working the case who were bringing the items out, so it was emotional for them too. But you'll notice that U-Haul, it wasn't a very big U-Haul, so it clearly wasn't all of the items that belonged to the kids inside the house. It was just some of them, which explains why there are more items in the house and why likely the families are going to want to retrieve some more of those items. So, couches, we did see the mattresses come out at one point, but couches, other pieces of furniture, all sorts of stuff. Again, you see how small that U-Haul was. You can just imagine all the other items that are still left behind there.
So, Bryan, on December 30th, that was the day that Bryan Kohberger was arrested. Within hours of his arrest, his public defender, Ann Taylor, put out a request to stop all remediation, all cleaning. And at that time, I remember us seeing these privacy curtains going up, and it looked as though they were going to empty out, big items, and then that immediately stopped. But there were big items that were still unloaded. What was the progression of that? And what happened with whatever was taken out of the house after the video we just showed?
Yeah, so there was that initial time where you just saw where the chief of police backed the U-Haul in and they took out a number of the personal items and then returned those to the families. Then there was another time that they went to the house and started removing other items. The mattresses were really the most visual thing that we could see. They were putting them in the back of pickup trucks. They were really starting to clear out the house, or at least start the process to do that. And that is when they immediately halted it. The public defender asked for it all to be stopped, which is really, really interesting because they were in the middle of doing it and they just shut the whole thing down. Exactly what was going on behind the scenes was still sort of unclear. It appears perhaps the public defender wanted an opportunity to really look through the house before things were moved around too much. But all of that stuff before they could get it out was left inside, which again explains why they now have to go through this process now and remove all the additional items from the house.
Can understand that. I want to end our discussion just with an answer that the university gave us when we asked if this is officially no longer a crime scene, because we have not had that announcement made by the police that was it a crime scene and has the title transferred. And they kind of gave us a half answer, Bryan. Do you have the letter in front of you, the executive director of communications?
Yeah, I have the quote here, and essentially they said that it is no longer a crime scene, but basically said the house has been fully transferred.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com.
Fully transferred. I guess so, since the owner has given it to the university. Now, what is the expectation for the property by the university? Will there be a memorial there or student housing? Student center or something pertaining to the university? What will the university put there, or will the university sell it to a private owner and they put another house, development, condo? What do you think should happen to the house? I find it interesting that things are still left inside of the house. We hear that the defense attorneys for Mr. Kohberger put the halt on things being removed out of the house a while ago. I believe that was January. I guess they wanted to go over the scene, which by law, they have every right to assess the house and the crime scene and go over said evidentiary material of the house as to use for their case for Mr. Kohberger. It's all morbid. As you heard her saying, Banfield, how quiet it was when they were removing some of the kids' things out of the house into the U-Haul. And not officially saying as of yet that the crime scene is done. When will they give us an announcement on that? But it was eerily quiet. But what is there to say? When they were taking the things out of the house, the children were deceased. It was a crime scene. Not much to say. Naturally, police aren't going to be answering questions while removing people's things out of a house. And I also was wondering the order of how they were going to get the kids' things out of the house when they were putting the items in the U-Haul. I was thinking where they're doing like one room at a time, because naturally you wouldn't want to mix up all the children's items, because then they wouldn't be in any order, and that would cause probably, friction with the families trying to go in a small U-Haul, picking out what they thought was their daughter's versus this daughter. It's very macabre. And it's a macabre scene when you die. When you see someone die, hear of someone dying, you hear of someone going in their house and their things and pulling their items out. And naturally, it's going to be hard for a family member to go through the things of their loved one, their clothes, their shoes, their pillows, their bedding, knickknacks. It will be very hard. Hello, Brittany. Thank you for joining me. Hello, everybody in the chat. Thank you so much. It'll be very hard. As many of you who have lost loved ones, and you've had to go through their things in their house to break down their house, apartments. It's very hard to do. And I think it's worse when a person has been brutally killed, because naturally there's remnants from the crime scene that may still be behind, depending on how you discovered them or came to get to the house. It's bad business. Do you believe they should tear down the house, or should it still be left up for evidentiary material? Because we have to ask ourselves about the grand jury and jury members. They may want to go in the house to see the layout of the house, to see how everything was set up, to see how the killer made entry, assumed entry. State's attorney may want to try to walk them through to say, I think he came through here and he went here, here, here. Then he went over here. There's nothing like a visual, because you will get that in most trials, a visual of a home, a condo. They'll try to lay out where they think the killer entered the home, which room he went in first, what he did. So should the house be left up for that reason, jury members can walk in, take a tour, get a general idea of what the house is like, and then demolish it after the jury members. And see, he hasn't gone to trial yet, so that means jury members haven't had the opportunity to get a tour of the house, the land, the circumference of the house, because I think they'll want that. They'll want to drive on the street up to the dead end, go up that hill with their apartments are, stand behind, walk down themselves, walk behind the house, go in the house, every room, every floor, back out the front door, sliding door, round to the front, to the curb, down the street, up around Willenta Drive to get a visual of what the killer did those months leading up to the kids' deaths. They'll need that. They'll need that visual. This is where he went. This is where he drove. This is where we believe he sat. So they can get an idea of where he could have parked, how long he parked, who could have seen him parked. They need to see all that because there's an apartment building that's directly in front of the house, and those are back windows of that apartment building. So who knows what those people saw in those windows over a couple of, few months up until the murders. So you never know what people visually see because people don't tell everything. So there's no telling who could have seen Kohberger driving up and down the street, parking, turning around in circles. Because obviously he did that the morning of, which shows he was nervous. He couldn't decide where to park. So I'm asking, where did he park the car? Up the hill, up the dead end, down the street, around the corner, what? Walk through the woods? Very interesting information. Yes, a walkthrough would be helpful. We had the opportunity to see it online because so many people were plastering it through Google search and Zillow and all those said things. But being a jury member, the jury members need to be able to go to the crime scene and walk through, if it's possible, to see where the incident took place, how the killer was able to get in, how the killer was able to get out. Macabre as it is, it has been done in many trials. I'd be very surprised if they demolished before a trial. Definitely needs to be seen by a jury. Yes, the jury needs to be able to go because they can't get a visual if the house is gone. Just you walking through and showing a layout of the house. It's nothing like being able to walk through the house. Walk on the land, the terrain, see what it looks like from the front to the back. They need to be able to see what a person could see while there are no leaves on the trees versus leaves on the trees, which there'll be leaves on there shortly. But he was stalking up until leaves, foliage, and then no foliage. All that's important. All of that's important. Bullseye view of other people, doorways, windows, what they could see of the house. Kids coming and going, visitors. See, a lot of this story is so baffling because in your mind, you're saying to yourself, these kids kept a lot of company. Who in the hell in their right mind would risk going in this house, period, any time of day, to do whatever harm, knowing that they had all this company running in and out of their house? But he didn't care. That's the point. It's no different than anybody else's house that keeps a lot of company. Sisters, brothers coming over, grandkids coming over, revolving door, but the killer decides to pick that house any damn way. I'm going in there. There's something in there I want. I'm going to get it. And that's the point of the story. He was determined. And that's obvious from the pings at the house, circling the drive, going up and down the street. He had to have lied in wait somewhere. Because he didn't enter the house to what? After 4 a.m.? He was over there already after 3 a.m. So what was he doing in that length of time? For about an hour. Stay woke now. Where was he? Because he left his house about what? 2:44 a.m. It only takes 15 minutes to get from his location to Moscow. And knowing him, he was flying like a bat out of hell. Eager to get over to that address. No matter what happens to that plot of land, memorial site, another apartment, house, it still will be creepy because the land is tainted. So you could tear down the structure, which most people would feel like you want to do that anyway. But the land is still tainted. And that's, I believe, an old Indian fable, myth. No matter about what was on it before, the land is tainted. And where horrible things have happened, the omen remains. I remember somebody once said it about a certain apartment complex where there was always trouble, violence, arrests. Somebody said, well, this was once Indian burial ground. And the land is sacred. So you've put this structure on top where there's nothing but foolishness and mayhem in an urban neighborhood. The two don't mix. Now, you're entitled to believe what you want about that. But let's just say it was an Indian burial ground at one time. And then many moons come by, an apartment building that's put up with 300 plus apartments, and there's always shooting, stabbing, people cutting each other, violence, fighting, fussing, turmoil, drug addicts running amok on the property. Hell no, they don't mix. And whether you're Jewish, Indian, Asian, everyone has their own theories of religion and different things. I do believe in that. But if something horrible takes place in a house, in a building, you could tear it down. But the land is tainted because something horrific happened on that land. And when you talk about killing 4 people brutally, I'm going to tell you the truth. If the house stood or didn't stand, I still would be leery to go on top of the land, on top of the lot. I just would. I really would. I would be fearful to go on top of that dirt. Because imagine putting a new structure there, or park benches, whatever you want to put there. Imagine someone sitting there and getting a very eerie, creepy feeling by being there, or hearing crying. And I wonder about that now, the people who still live right there in that hole. Do they hear crying? Imagine that. Hearing crying in the night when all is still quiet. And no one's living in that house. No one's there. But you hear crying at night. Very interesting. Let's see what the school has to say to the parents. Thank you for joining me. This source is also News Nation. This is the university's letter to the parents. Thank you for joining me.
letter that we have now obtained that the University of Idaho sent to the parents of all four of the victims of the Idaho student murders at 1122 King Road. And it has to do with the future of that home and what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. It's extremely sad because this is it's still a mysterious tomb if you think about it. So many of the possessions of the kids are still in the home. And the university wanted to address that with the family as well. Not only the plan for the house of demolition and remediation, but also reclaiming what's left. And there is reaction as well from the families, which I'm going to give you in a moment. I was just going to read this letter to you, word for word, without any editing. Okay, it begins this way. I am the acting general counsel for the University of Idaho and oversee the legal services for the university. I first want to express my condolences to each of you for the tragic loss that you've suffered. I greatly appreciate the positive manner in which you have interacted with the university in the aftermath of this tragedy. I am writing to communicate to each of you regarding the university's plans for the house at 1122 King Road. As was conveyed to you by Dean of Students Blake Eccles, the homeowner gifted the house to the university with the intent by both parties that it be demolished. Before doing so, we will complete remediation within the house to address biohazards and chemical hazards that exist as a result of the crimes and ensuing investigation. At the completion of the remediation, we intend to have the remediation team gather any items of personal property that do not appear to be contaminated and transfer them to university personnel who will take these items to a secure off-site location for representative members of the families to review and recover items of your family members that you wish to keep. Items not selected will then be properly disposed of. This will not apply to large, bulky items such as sofas, beds, or the like, to the extent that any remain on site. If you have specific items you wish to be on the lookout for, regardless of size, please let me know. If we can locate and retain them for you, we will. We intend to proceed with demolition as soon after completion of the remediation as can be done. We do not yet have a specific date for when this will occur. We will notify you of the demolition date in advance so you are not caught by surprise by media reports. In the interim, we are making every effort to respect the dignity of your loved ones, and our activities will be done outside of media scrutiny as much as possible. The house is currently surrounded by construction fencing. The windows and doors have been securely boarded, and we are not allowing access into the house by anyone not specifically authorized by the university. Anyone authorized to enter the house will be required to agree to strict non-disclosure and will be prohibited from taking photographs or otherwise recording the inside.
Ooh.
This communication constitutes the university's formal notice to you of our intention to proceed with remediation and demolition as described above. If you have any concerns with these plans, please contact me by April 3rd of 2023. We will address those prior to proceeding. If you have retained legal counsel, I encourage you to share this communication, notifying you of the proposed plans. You or your counsel may contact the Office of General Counsel via email, that's redacted, or call me at the phone number listed below, which I've redacted, to discuss any concerns or objections that you may have. Once again, I want to express my deepest sympathy and my condolences to each family member. It is my hope that the university's plan to remove the house helps you in your healing. A reply indicating you have received this email would be greatly appreciated, and the letter is signed by the acting counsel at the University of Idaho. So that had to be processed by the family members. They have to either respond, at least to tell them that they've received this email, and then also if they have any concerns about the plans for remediation and demolition, and then if they have any specific items that they would like to point the university to for retrieval. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find it.
All right, everybody, that's Banfield reading the letter from the university to the parents pertaining to the remaining items that's in the house. Basically, the bulky items they were not going to move, but the parents can give notation of whatever they want out of the house so long as it has not been contaminated. Woo, that was a lot, very lengthy. I still think it's interesting that Kaylee didn't get a chair and gown, cap. I'm going to say that. With all this letter writing and letter reading and whoever that guy was, Dean, whomever crying months ago, I'm still saying that. Where was her chair? Her posthumous degree? I think you all should have given her a posthumous degree considering she was to graduate. That's the honorable thing to do. Just saying. Can a judge put an order in place to not tear down the house? Yes. Yes, the judge can order just about anything. So we'll see. Maybe the defense will bring that up, that they don't think the house should be torn down. They want, jury members to be able to see the house. The state may also want the house still to stand so people can see the house, the layout of the outside, the inside, because it's going to be pivotal to their case in laying out this man stalking these kids, going to the house. They may want to show them how he drove by, where he could have parked, his entry point, his exit point. It is helpful to actually have, a place standing. But as you hear, this university wants to get on with this. They want the parents to respond by April 3rd, pertaining to the house, because they want to get rid of it. They want to take it down as soon as possible. And I'm sure it's an eyesore for many who live right there, especially the neighbors directly across from the house, the side of the house to the left, and then the apartment building to the right. And then, of course, in front of the house, that's a long apartment building. Those are back windows at the back of that building face the house. So I'm sure there are many people who are tired of looking at the house. It's an eyesore. And as I said, when you're dealing with brutal crime, plural, that's to be expected. So should the house remain or should it be torn down? I don't have any problem with the house being torn down. I just think perhaps it should be torn down after the jury have gone in. The jury has seen the house, been on the property, walked around, got an idea of what the house looks like inside and out, and then you could tear it down. The trial is coming up in June, allegedly. Hopefully there won't be any shenanigans with Kohberger and his defense team needing more time or any other type of theatrics, because so long as something pops off, that's what upholds the person going to trial. So we got to pray he doesn't start acting like he's lost his mind and he don't want this attorney, that attorney, all that type of nonsense, because that will push it back. Okay, Hagen says get rid of the house after the trial. Okay, yeah. Hopefully the trial will start on time in June. It will go a few weeks because naturally, they probably have a lot of evidence to bring forward. Devices, text messaging apps, all that type of stuff, surveillance, and whatever they found in the house, eyewitness accounts. You're going to have eyewitness testimonies pertaining to that demon, who he was, this and that, eyewitness accounts of the children. So who knows? It might go on a month or more due to the evidence and the fact that he did, brutally stab 4 kids. A lot of information to describe each victim. So it may go on a little bit. But I wanted to start immediately because I'm tired of talking about Kohberger. This gets to a point in a storyline where it's just ho-hum. It's boring. And I'm tired of talking about him. I don't want to hear about what he ate for dinner, lunch. He has his own damn TV. He requests to change the channel. I could care less. Because once I heard that they were ordering out his meals in the beginning when he first got there, I was turned off by this sheriff's office, and I was done with them. I was done with them. I was done with Kohberger. I just want justice for the kids, and we keep it moving on to the next story because he's a nobody. He could be out here living his best life for a 28-year-old, but he chose not to. That's his choice. He snuffed out those kids for no damn reason. And when you watch this last video of Banfield talking about the letter to the parents from the university, you will see that video that's been aired a lot of times of the kids dancing. Kaylee's going up and down and the kids popping up behind her. It's creepy. It's eerie. It's very eerie to me when they show video footage of people after death. Because you're looking at them smiling, laughing, they're talking to the camera, they're playing around, but you know that they're not alive. You know that that's just a video. That's all it is. They're not coming back. They're not going to ever speak to anybody again. There's no reincarnation. There's no nothing. This is it. And that's the thing about life. No dress rehearsal. This is it. Once you're gone, you're gone. And it's horrible to look at these kids in pictures, look at them in live video footage, talking, and that's all the parents have of their kids. Live videos, pictures, probably text messaging. That's all they have left. And it's very creepy. I'm going to put a poll up pertaining to the house. Do you all think it should be demolished now, after trial, or after the jury does a walkthrough? That's the poll I'm going to put up when I end this live. I'm not going to keep you all because I'm a little bit over an hour. I'm going to get out and get on to my day, but I want to thank you all for following this network. I want to thank you for tuning in. Please go to my community page for updates to breaking news and updated stories. Any story I don't speak on, I may just post it to my community board just to let you know what's going on in the world. Prayers for the bottom states, Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama. They've had some horrific storms, tornadoes come through. Prayers for Mississippi. It's been just literally ransacked by the tornadoes that hit through there. I believe that's Rolling Rock and Silver. I forgot the name of it. Silver City, excuse me. Prayers for them. They're going to need our prayers. They're going to need funds. I don't know if these people will want to rebuild or they'll just move somewhere else. Frankly, the safest place to live is where I live, East Tennessee. We don't have major tornadoes and floods, and because it's not flat here in this eastern part of the state, it's very hilly. It's rough in certain places as far as driving, because I do drive a lot for the job I do, which is wearing me out. But it's the safest place because we don't have hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods. We do get bad storms, but it's the safest place, and it's one of the places in the United States that many people are migrating to from California, Florida. Many people are moving here to Tennessee because it is a little cheaper to live, and we just don't have the bad weather like many states have. But I want to thank you all for your time. I will be back possibly later tonight. I want to bring you commentary pertaining to Chicago. We're going to dissect what's going on up there with these men being found dead in bodies of water. Is there a serial killer roaming the streets of Chicago and the metro Chicago area? Is this a new killer, more than one killer, or a killer that has been around? You're welcome, Brittany. Thank you all for joining me. What is going on in Chicago? It's very creepy. Hearing of men being discarded in water. Are they being drugged, given drugs, overdosing, dumped, led to the water, pushed in the water? What's going on? We're going to talk about that later on tonight and get that subject matter out of the way. As I told you all, there was a shooting in Nashville. It's posted to my, I didn't post it to my community board. I saw it in the News Nation queue. Feel free to check News Nation for that said update. I will post it to my community board. Please take my poll pertaining to who was the intended victim of Bryan Kohberger. Was it Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, or all of the girls. All three, rather, because two are alive. And as I played this information from Banfield, it's contradictory to say some were collateral damage, got in the way. That makes no sense, only because two are alive. So it can't be that Xana or Ethan, if they weren't the targets, were collateral damage because he walked by DM. There's something to focus on. We've been speculating this for months now. Who was the intended target? As I said, law enforcement possibly knows who the intended target was. But if we are to believe that there was one target and he killed the other ones because they were in the way, one was in the bed with one of the targets and he crossed the paths with Xana, Ethan, blah, blah, blah. Why did he leave DM and Bethany alive? Because he watched that house and he had to have known that they lived there. He's seen them in photographs with the other girls. The intended targets. So why would he not kill them as well? Breach their bedroom doors. Why not? You already broke into the house. What's the difference? Number two, if Kaylee was the intended victim, if she allegedly moved out, why would you have killed her? How did you even know she was there? What are the odds that the day he shows up, she's there allegedly visiting Maddie? See, there's a lot to chop up. Because, see, we don't know everything. We don't know who the intended victim was. We don't know if he just killed the other kids because they were there, could hear something. But then once again, all that's contradictory because two were left unharmed. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $sign Big Angie, 129, Cash App, stickers and chats are welcome during all live streams. Thank you for your time. You all have a wonderful week. I will post a movie for the week or weekend. You have been listening to The Vault. XL.